David Evans knocked on the incorrect door at 3:07 a.m. while holding his half-slumbering 5-year-old daughter on his hip. His phone had followed the neon sign of the motel, which blinked like a bad joke, and his GPS had died. He hadn't planned to open the door for several hours. No vac, just as his rusted-out Honda Civic sputtered its last breath a few blocks back. He was exhausted, broke, embarrassed, and desperate, so he didn't think twice, but 3 times he knocked on the porch light that was glowing like a lighthouse through the storm. As the door creaked open, an old woman's gray hair was loosely braided, and her robe was thick and floral, as if she had just seen a ghost. Her eyes widened, and she said, "I'm sorry," David said quickly, trying not to move Ellie too much. However, the woman softly raised her hand and said, "I've been waiting since 1998. David blinked. She whispered, "Come in, each of you. You are drenched." He should have said, "No," apologized again, and retreated from the porch to think of something else. But the emotional and physical warmth behind her pulled at something inside of him that he didn't realize was still active by the time they were inside. David's coat was hanging. Ellie was wrapped up on a couch beneath a knit blanket that smelled of lavender and cookies, and a cup of peppermint tea was steaming in his trembling hands. He finally said, watching the woman add sugar to her own cup of tea, "You said you were waiting," and she smiled. "In 1998, my son left, packed a bag, and declared he was going to see the world, but he never came back, left a note, or called." David took a deep breath and continued, "I left the porch light on every night. People thought I was stupid, but I hoped that one day he would return exhausted, confused, or broken. There was not a single postcard at all." David softly said, "I'm not him." And she nodded, "But it appeared as though you might be someone else's son. He might not have come home, or perhaps it was someone who still needed a mother." They talked until dawn about loss, life, and what it's like when your dreams don't cover the rent. David told Ellie's mother's tale, explaining that cancer doesn't give a damn about your goals or how well you're doing. He talked about the tough days, the quiet days, and the days when even peanut butter toast feels like a luxury, she told him. About being a nurse for 42 years, about her garden, her husband, who passed in 97, and the way the house creaked at night as if remembering all the stories it used to hold. She made them eggs and toast, found a dry set of pajamas her grandson had once left behind. She never reciprocated in any way. David never made it to the Briarwood Inn. He stayed 3 days instead, remedied her faulty step, rewired a hallway light that was flickering for Miss Helen. Ellie chose the flowers and drew pictures that hung on the fridge like priceless masterpieces when they left. Helen hugged him tighter than his own mother ever had pressed a note that was folded into his hand. "Open it later," she said he did that night in a borrowed bed at a friend's apartment. With Ellie finally sleeping peacefully beside him, David unfolded the paper. Inside was a short letter, simple, honest, also life-altering. "Dear David, thank you for knocking. You reminded me that kindness never truly goes away, but occasionally it does fade for a while. I've put money into a small savings account I set aside for my son, just in case he would be pleased to learn that it assisted another young man who was attempting to do the right thing by his daughter. Use it wisely, and return the favor whenever you can, love." Helen included a $2,000 check. David did return the favor a few years later with steady work, a used minivan, and Ellie starting school. He founded a nonprofit organization that assisted single parents in finding emergency shelter. The Porch Light Project, named after the beacon that had once welcomed him home when he had none, was the first program. Each participating home kept a light on, provided warmth, a meal, and a listening ear, just in case anyone else was still in the dark, exhausted, and still calling. The lights are still on in hundreds of homes today in both urban and rural areas, just like Helen's once did, just to boost morale. Sometimes when you're lost and think you're bothering someone, you might be the answer they've been waiting for, because kindness often returns in the most unexpected knock. Months passed, but David never stopped thinking about Helen. He'd send her postcards with Ellie's crayon drawings and handwritten notes. Sometimes just a picture David in a new work uniform, a picture of the garden he started behind their apartment. Ellie with missing front teeth. Helen wrote back consistently. She mentioned in one note that she turned off the porch light at night for the first time in years, not because she had given up hope, but because she felt at peace. I think my boy came. Home, after all, she wrote, just not in the way I expected. That line stayed with David, not just because it meant something to him, but because it reminded him that family isn't always blood people who hold your baby so you can have a hot cup of tea. Sometimes give you more than you thought you needed, even though they don't ask for anything in return. One cold November evening, as David packed boxes of donated coats into his van for a local shelter, he saw a young woman huddled under a bus stop bench, clutching a toddler. Her eyes were the same kind of tired he once saw in his bathroom mirror back when every day felt like drowning. He parked the van, walked over, asked if she needed assistance. She flinched at first, but something in his voice must have felt safe. She nodded. He didn't tell her everything, just helped her into the van, handed her a blanket, and said, "There's a house with a warm light on not far from here. You can stay the night, maybe longer if you need." She gave him a look. That suggested she wanted to believe it, like maybe this wasn't a trick or a pity gesture or another empty promise. Why? With a cracked voice, she questioned, "Why would you want to help a stranger?" "When I knocked on the wrong door, someone helped me and led me to a house where a retired couple had prepared a room in case anything happened. A new light was on, another door was open, and another night when the world softened a little. From there, the network grew. The story was told to people, volunteers donated, offered rooms, spare couches, and warm meals." David smiled softly and said the words that had changed everything for him once. At her high school graduation years later, in front of a room full of proud parents, Ely talked about her father and how he taught her that love often came in the form of a blanket or a cup of tea at 3 in the morning. They called it a movement, but David always said it was just people remembering how to be human. After the ceremony, she hugged him and whispered, "I want to be like her." He asked, bewildered, "Like who?" "Helen," she replied. "You were the one who knocked Dad, but she was the one who opened the door." It was then that he realized that night wasn't just a lucky break. Before he even stepped onto that porch, a ripple had already started. A ripple born from one woman's hope, one light left on through decades of waiting, a single act of kindness that changed more than one person's life, creating dozens, hundreds, and more than he could count, all because someone said, "I've waited since 1998. There are moments when you believe you've taken a wrong turn, but it turns out you've finally reached your destination.